Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another unboxing here on Nerd of the Rings. We've got another Rohirrim sword. This time it is the Lady Éowyn, the Shield Maiden of Rohan. I'm very pumped to add to my Rohirrim collection. I'm a big fan of the Rohirrim, as you well know. So let's get this puppy open and get started. Now, I'm very curious to see how Éowyn's compares to her brother Éomer's sword and her uncle Theoden's, so I will get those out later so we can kind of compare the three models together. I never get tired of opening these awesome swords. There we go. Right off the bat, in its glory, the sword of Éowyn. You could say it's the foe of the Witch King, the Witch King's bane. Well, I guess technically Merry's sword is also the Witch King's bane, as kind of a tag team effort, but you get the idea. This was the final death blow for the Witch King. We can see the pommel and hilt are unique. They're definitely different from Éomer and Theoden's. And again, I say this a lot, but the level of detail that Weta did when they designed these, and then by extension, United Cutlery, when they made the replicas here, the amount of detail is just incredible. And I love that, you know, not all the Rohirrim swords are the same. Everyone has a different sword, or at least among the main characters, the important characters, each have a very distinct sword. They all pay homage to the horses of Rohan, but at the same time, they're each unique. And as we see a lot with the Rohirrim swords, it's definitely a one-handed sword. You know, I have Orcrist back there. You can kind of sneak a second hand on Orcrist, but this one is definitely a one-handed sword for Éowyn. All right, so we're going to set this aside for just a moment. We're going to look at the wall plaque and the certificate of authenticity. All right, and here we have Éowyn's wall plaque, and again, it works in the imagery of the horses, but it's also unique. It's different than Theoden's, which I'm looking at on my wall right now, and Éomer's. It's most similar to Éomer's. It's got the same shape to the plaque itself, and the horse's posture is somewhat similar to Éomer's, but they are definitely different, and some of the design work across the bottom is different as well. And then, of course, we have the certificate of authenticity. As you know, I'm always a fan when they're not rolled up. They're much easier to manage for these videos when they're not rolled up. But we've got some concept art of Éowyn, which I don't think I've actually seen this piece of concept art before. It may be in one of these books back here, and I just don't recall. But you can see the design on the sword is indeed what we ended up with. Very similar to what we ended up with for the actual sword. So that's a cool little piece of design art. And of course, on the back, as always, it says the One Ring verse. And on the front, we'll take a look at what it says about Éowyn and specifically her sword. Born in Edoras, Éowyn suffered the early death of her parents and was forced to look after her ailing uncle, King Theoden, whose health was rapidly diminishing under the increasing control of Saruman and Wormtongue. The beautiful and strong Éowyn was trained as a shield maiden, and was considered to have surpassed many Rohirrim men in terms of craft and skill. She carried a full-size sword, which measured nearly 3 feet in length from tip to hilt. The bronze guard and pommel were styled beautifully in honor of the Meras. Now remember, the Meras are the greatest of all horses, so Shadowfax, he is one of the Meras. This was to improve the grip of Éowyn's small hand upon the sword. The hand grip was crafted with a raised middle section of 3 bronze rings. A wide fuller groove runs down 3/4 of the blade to reduce the weight, yet still retain critical blade strength. This type of fuller was common among royal swords of the Rohirrim. Now, for those of you who don't know, the fuller groove that they're talking about, that is this part of the sword that is kind of like indented. And like it says, that is to reduce the weight. Being Éowyn, a woman of smaller stature than probably a lot of the men of Rohan, So she's got a special handle, but then also the fuller there to reduce the weight for her so she can swing this thing around a little bit. Against her uncle's wishes, a disguised Éowyn rode with the Rohirrim to the Pelennor fields along with the hobbit Merry, in defense of their fallen king. Éowyn achieved true heroism as she succeeded in the slaying of the Witch King and his fell steed. However, she also suffered a heinous injury during the crusade. After being healed by King Elisar, Éowyn finally abandoned her passion for battlefield grandeur and found true love in the arms of Faramir. And that just reminds me how much I love the pairing of Faramir and Éowyn, and I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want to get Faramir's sword now and then like hang them up right next to each other here in the Nerd Cave. And then it tells us a little bit about the sword itself. The overall length is 36.5 inches long. It's got a solid metal guard and pommel with an antique brass plated finish. And obviously, as we said, the hilts are cast as the famous horses of Rohan, and the grip is wrapped in genuine leather. The 30 1/8 inch false edge blade is crafted of double fullered, 1/4 inch thick, tempered stainless steel. And then of course, as always, we've got to shout out the fantastic folks at Weta who designed this sword. Under the art direction of Richard Taylor, the Sword of Éowyn was designed by production designer Warren Mayhew. The movie prop was created by production swordsmith Peter Lyon and production artist Sean Bolton. So as always, shout out to the Weta guys who obviously did the most incredible job of giving all these weapons so much detail, and they kind of feel like they have history behind them, and there's always a rhyme and reason for the way they designed them that makes sense for the characters, which is just incredible, and it adds more depth to the movies that I love so much. I gotta say, I really, really like the pommel on this one. I mean, I'll be honest, I love all the Rohirrim swords, and each of them is unique, like I said, which is really cool. But the pommel just feels like it's got this heft to it that makes it a little bit easier to kind of swing around because you've got that counterbalanced weight. I also like with Éowyn's sword, the thing that I notice is how the blade gets thick right here as it meets the hilt. There's a few swords like that. I want to say that Boromir's maybe is one that comes to mind that's like that, but so often you see they're pretty uniform, pretty uniform thickness until they get to the tip. With that, let's go ahead and bust out Theoden and Éomer swords and see how the family of the Rohirrim swords goes together. All right, and here we have the family of Rohan swords. And just comparing them, I was actually kind of surprised to realize that Éomer's is a little bit shorter than Éowyn's. The pommel on Éowyn's is larger, which again, that kind of makes sense because that would be a bit of a counterbalance for the weight. But I don't know, maybe Éomer just likes to be a few inches closer when he stabs somebody. As far as the weight goes, Theoden's is definitely the heaviest. Éomer and Éowyn's are actually very similar in terms of weight. That's not me actually weighing them, just holding them in hand. They seem very, very similar. Now, I just remembered this, but an interesting note is that Éowyn's sword is actually the twin of her cousin Theodred. So Theoden's son, Theodred, who dies in the Two Towers, his sword is the exact same style as Éowyn's, but he's got some different color accents. So the leather grip is actually green, and there's some green accents within the horses on the hilt. But I don't know, I think that's kind of a cool touch that, further ties that connection within that family together. Obviously, Éowyn and Theodred are close, and Éowyn's grief at Theodred's passing is the one that we primarily see, or at least that we experience first before Theoden, is released from his control by Gandalf. And if you go even more in depth into like the books where Theodred calls Éowyn dearer than daughter, it kind of makes sense that he would give her a sword that matches that of his own blood son. So there you have it. It is the sword of the woman we all love, Éowyn, Shield Maiden of Rohan, the bane of the Witch King, gets this sword right in his face, right there. And yes, I've said it a million times, but I love the Rohirrim in the Lord of the Rings. Both the book version and movie version They bring the epicness, they bring the heart, and they are wonderful characters, and I am super pumped to have Éowyn's sword in my collection now. Special shout out to United Cutlery, who sent me this to give you guys an up-close look and to unbox this with you guys today. Be sure to go to the link in the description so you can check out Éowyn's sword for yourself and all the huge range of weaponry and helmets and wizard staffs, all that good stuff from the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit trilogies. Find that link in the description, check it out. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time for another unboxing here on Nerd of the Rings. I'll be gentle doing that. It's a cool sound though. Begone, foul Dwimalek, Lord of Carrion. Leave the dead in peace. That's a really cool line. I wish they would have had that in the movies. I love that line. It's a great moment in the movies, but man, those book lines are so good. I have to look it up every time what a Dwimmerlake is, but it's still a really cool line. Lord of Carrion? That's even cooler. I need more room. I want to dual wield these. Whoa, I'm gonna stab my couch! No! That's not good. I put holes in my wall on occasion, but I haven't put any in the couch yet. I'm gonna have to be careful.